Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Mandel. I'm the Executive Director of the Safe and Together Institute, and we're really happy to have you join us for this first info session we've ever had on our certification program. And from the registration forms, many of you are familiar with our organization. We worked with you before, and some of you are new to us. So welcome to both groups of folks. If I can remind people to put their phones on mute, their audio on mute now, that would be greatly appreciated. The way it's going to work is I'm screen sharing a PowerPoint presentation for the first 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll be taking questions after that. So if you can, as I go through the presentation, if you can write down any questions you might have, you can put them in the chat box or write them down for yourself. That would be great, and that way we can do questions all at once, starting around 2:20 or 2:30. For those of you who are not familiar with the Safe and Together Institute, we've been around about 12, 13 years, and we're a leader around training at the intersection of domestic violence and children, and our work is dedicated to professional development. And as you can see here from our mission, we're really focused on creating, nurturing, and sustaining a global network of domestic violence-informed child welfare professionals, communities, and systems. And I'm joined on this call by Heidi Rankin, who's one of our associate directors, who works closely with this project in terms of the training portion of it, and Shelley Napolitano-Flynn, who is the anchor on logistics and communication with partner agencies and our certification processes. So they'll be helping me out on this call. And really this process grew out of trying to find an efficient, effective, sustainable way to bring the Safer Together model to agencies and communities. From here, that in the last 13 years, our work has expanded quite extensively, and that we are working in at least a lot in the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, and our projects that we do range from collaborations on national research projects in Australia, say for instance, around intersections of domestic violence, substance use, and mental health issues, to collaboration and training for the Ministry of Defense in the United Kingdom, where we're adapting our core training for military environment, to coaching efforts in intensive training in Manitoba, Canada, to multi-year projects with state-level jurisdictions in the United States, like Michigan, New Mexico, Ohio, Florida, Iowa, and just to touch on a number of different things. So our model is really being used in a number of different places in the US and abroad to improve outcomes for domestic violence survivors, adult and child domestic violence survivors, and to really help us intervene safely and effectively with perpetrators of violence. For those of you, again, who are not familiar with the model, this is really a quick high-level look at it, which is that the idea behind the model is that from a kid's point of view, so it's child-centered. We often like to say it's survivor strength-based as well, and it's focused on perpetrators' patterns. And the name comes from this idea that from the point of view of the kids, it's often in their best interest that we work together to keep them safe and together with that non-offending parent, the adult domestic violence survivor. And the model itself is really based on this idea of a system of principles, critical components, practice tools. That goal is to increase competencies and cross-systems collaboration. And I'll talk a little bit about the core training that's one of the deliverables as part of this certification process. But we're very much focused on the hows. And how do you get the work done? And you'll see here that in our work, that this is just some of the things that define who we are. So, this call is not designed to really be super focused on familiarizing yourself with the model. We're assuming, one, that you have some knowledge, or you have the ability to go to our website and peruse the material, go to our YouTube channel, download reports, look at the videos that are on our webpage. There's a lot of information that comes through our website that really will give you access to the material. And we're going to encourage people to think that we want you to be familiar with the model if you're going to join us as a partner agency. We want you to understand what the model does and doesn't do, what you're engaging in, and the benefits of it. And so we're going to talk some about those things. So our work is really based on this idea of a comprehensive, unique perpetrator pattern-based approach, which really does a number of things at once, helps really do risk and safety assessments related to kids in cases involving domestic violence. It really helps provide a context for understanding survivors' strengths in the context of domestic violence, because if you don't know the perpetrator's pattern, then you really can't fully assess the survivor's or non-offending parent's strengths. It really lets you close the gap, the historic gap that's between the understanding of child abuse and neglect and domestic violence perpetration, and move from thinking about the nexus of domestic violence in kids being just did the kids see it and hear it. We're trying to close the gap with the approach to really understanding the multiple pathways by which perpetrators harm child and family functioning. And in doing that, we create better plans for families, better court interventions do they need to be done, better collaborations, grounding the focus on perpetrators on real change, not just participation in services. So this is just touching on some really key bits of the model. And then in our training that we focus on, not just what's problematic, but we really focus on how do you do it differently. So for instance, in our core training, which is one of the things that people get certified to deliver at the beginning, the 4 days of that core training is centered around teaching people how to interview family members when domestic abuse is present, how to document those cases well, how to case plan, and how to do good assessment. And we focus on the perpetrator, the survivor, and the kids. From the point of view of who we are from organizational culture, we really want our clients, the agencies we partner with, the professionals we work with to succeed. And we strive to be responsive, to learn from the folks that we're working with. We are about to embark on a set of 2 days trainings for solicitors in Queensland, Australia. And we're going to do a month after follow-up with the leadership from those agencies to really learn what they took away from that training, for instance, so we can really keep adapting and growing in our material. We're willing to embrace the difficult questions about really what does it mean to struggles in systems that may not have been designed for these kind of cases, or to really work at the intersections of really difficult issues like domestic abuse, substance abuse, and mental health issues. The fourth thing I want to mention kind of here is we're kind of thinking about who we are and what this might mean to you if you want to be a partner agency, is that we are a small organization with a global footprint, and that global footprint and that multi-jurisdictional experience and the depth of experience. My work in this field of domestic violence goes back about 30 years or so, maybe longer. Work with child protection and domestic violence goes back about 22 or 23 years. And that's just me, not including the staff, that with the experience we bring in multiple jurisdictions with multiple issues, that we really can help people avoid reinventing the wheel and share information and act as a hub across jurisdictions and across time in some sense in terms of experience. And that we're strength-based from the top to the bottom and out to our clients. And it's really important to connect that back to generosity. It's really important to connect that back to learning. But we understand that the work has to be strength-based when we're talking about domestic violence survivors and kids. It has to be strength-based when we're talking about the work of social workers or case managers or court personnel, that we're often starting with the assumption that good work is being done and we want to learn about what people are doing right with cases, and then we work out from there. And that we even understand that you could be strength-based in your work with perpetrators if it's grounded in the perpetrator's pattern of behavior, which is really about the danger they represent to their partner and kids. So this is a little bit about who we are. So as the model has expanded globally, we wanted to move more into the role of not only just delivering training, both live and through e-learning, and doing organizational assessments, but we really became to recognize that we wanted to have a way to partner with local organizations, because as we worked in far-flung places like Mount Isa, Queensland, in Australia, or work in Western Australia, in Perth, if we're working in Hong Kong or Singapore, or working in the United Kingdom, or Thunder Bay, or Winnipeg, or Iowa in the U.S., or California, or New York City, that while the issues of domestic violence are extremely similar in many ways, and the dynamics are very similar in many ways, that there was a need for localization, there was a need for sustainability, there was a need for reduced costing that would come with not bringing us sometimes across a continent and ocean to get to you to train. And we needed to be able to deliver those results with an intention to model fidelity. When people are asking us, can we be trained in the model, they're actually asking for model fidelity. So we spent a lot of time devising a robust certification program that we're still building, to be honest, because it's a learning process for us. And that certification program really is about a relationship that we want to develop between your agency and the Safe and Together Institute, and also between us and a certified trainer who would work for you. Because you can't have a partner agency in this context without a certified trainer, and certified trainers can't work separate from a partner agency. And so as I go through the next few slides, I want you to think about these things about the goal is for us to help build local capacity in agencies and communities to be more domestic violence informed. And that we are, this is not a one and done certification training. We don't come in and do 2 days of training. There's ongoing relationships, there's ongoing costs, and there's ongoing benefits that kind of really work its way through this entire process. So, want to start with some of the financial details, and we'll kind of weave them through as we go through this. One of the things you want to understand is that we used to do a different model. Excuse me. We used to do a different model of certification. We've been doing certification training for about 10 years. So certification training is not new for us, but it's usually very jurisdictionally focused. And what we found was that demanded a very high upfront cost from the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction needed to be large in order to do it, to sustain those costs. And that the large upfront costing meant that turnover was very costly. Losing trainers was extremely costly. We had one place that invested a lot of money upfront and lost 80% of their trainers in the first year. And that's not an outcome that's acceptable for that client, nor it is for us, because that's a waste of our energy. So we devised a certification program that started with a much lower initial entry cost. So I'm showing you in US dollars what our current upcoming May certification training is costing in terms of the fees to us. Separate from that is whatever travel costs you might have, but that is a much lower rate than we charged for initial certification in the past. And that represents gives you the ability to deliver our core training and our overview training. So our core training is 4 days. Our overview training is 1 day. And to do those trainings delivered for the core for sure at a 65% estimated reduction in cost than if you paid us to come in and do it. And that we do it with a pay-as-you-go structure. So in addition to that upfront cost, you pay a licensing fee per person trained. And I'll explain to you what you get for that and what the benefit is, but it lets you manage costs, spread it out over a number of years, and determine how to best train your agency or train out into your community as well. And then once that certification requirements are met for those trainers, you're able to deliver the number of core and 1-day overview trainings that you want. So you get to control that kind of experience. Sometimes people will say, to get certified, how many trainings do we need to promise to deliver? And there's no requirement on our side. You can make that initial investment and realize that your implementation plan isn't what you want it to be. Your agency changes direction. You're not on the hook for anything more than what you paid for that initial certification training. And so there's a lot of control that we give over to you to design the implementation plan that you want. And what we do is we provide a robust level of support around the implementation that you want to do, which includes really ongoing unlimited technical assistance from an assigned Safe and Together training mentor, and you'll see that there's a requirement for the certified trainers to be part of that. We offer free systems level implementation consultation, and what that means is you would do a call with me or one of our staff to really discuss who you want to target for the training, how to best use the trainings, and then to make a plan that can be multi-year about what you want to do to develop this capacity in your organization or community. You get electronic files, everything you need to deliver the training, including the trainer's manuals, the handouts, the videos. We give you specs for how that needs to be done. But in many ways, you could think about this as turnkey. You do your local work, your logistics, and we give you all the support and material so you can deliver the trainings well with model fidelity. What you're going to find is that we provide also support around marketing materials, up to including co-branded event pages if that's what you want. Again, this is all included in the process. These are things you might or might not want, but they're available to you. We provide regular curriculum updates, which means we've done probably in the last 5 or 6 years 3 major revisions of our core curriculum. You would get those revisions with the support you need around it as well, including more minor kind of updates and fixes as we go through things. And then, and this is one of the most important things, is that we have a scaffolded sort of credentialing process. And the best way to explain it is the first go around of training, you can get trained to do the core and the 1-day overview. But subsequent years, and we're committed to doing this on a yearly basis, you may have access to doing additional credentials so you can deliver other trainings like a supervisory training, a training on intersections between domestic violence, substance use, and mental health issues. We're expecting, we may add a partnering one, another one on working with men as parents. So the plan is to really push out capacity from our agency to yours through this certification and partnering program. And the last thing I want to touch about sort of what kind of is included or packaged in this is that we provide, and it's actually required that you buy into this or participate, that we provide all the evaluation of those trainings and their delivery through our system online from Kirkpatrick level 1 to 3, which means we do pre and post testing, we do training satisfaction, and then we follow up in 4 months, which is the Kirkpatrick level 3, where we actually ask the participants questions about how they applied their knowledge to their practice and what facilitated that and what hindered that. And we provide these back to you in infographic and fuller reports within a specific amount of time. And if I get a chance to show you one of the infographics, I will. But our goal is to really get that information back to you so you can share it, that you can leverage it for whatever you want, which may be increased funding, and that you really can show the effects. It also lets us monitor the quality of the trainers. And one of the things to really understand is that because the certification lies with us, we set certain expectations for the quality of the work with the trainers, and that we have a plan built into our contract that if certain marks in terms of scores the trainers don't get, that we move people to remediation plans. And eventually, if somebody doesn't do well, and this has only happened once, we can actually remove the certification. And it really is our commitment to quality that really drives that. Our first desire is to support excellence and improvement, but to really understand that because the certification lies with us, that that's an option that we have if certain marks are not hit. And then also being part of this certification program and being a partner agency would give you access to e-learning discounts, and then we're working through processes so you may be able to share those discounts with partners in your community. And then for those of you who can actually are looking to generate revenue through this process, that you will be able to may be able to get a share of the e-learning money that comes in through your connections that come back to you. And so we're still working out the details of that because a lot of these systems are taking a little bit more to work out. So just wanted to, before I go into the certification process and talk about what's involved with that, I just wanted to touch a little bit on the revenue generating. The model of the certification program and the partner agency approach was set up so if people were interested, and you're not required, if you were looking to generate revenue, and this is usually for nonprofits or NGOs, not for governments, that you would have the ability to train others in the training curricula you were trained in and charge a fee for that. And part of that fee could be used to recoup your cost to us, but part of that fee could be kept to yourselves to generate revenue. And so that's a specific option that's available, and there's a separate vetting process for that. But I'm happy to take questions afterwards. But this holds the potential for generating revenue for those agencies that are interested in and can do that. So that was really this kind of look at the wider certification program and the partner agency program, and I'll take questions about that in a few minutes. This gives you a rundown of the steps involved in the certification and recertification process for individual trainers. And that people to become certified trainers, the first thing they need to do is go through our core training. And the next one that's open to the public is in Denver in April, starting April 2nd, I believe, right, Shelley? Yeah. And that people need to complete that with a score of 80% or higher. They can have done another core with us at another point, but they need to show the same kind of success at the test scoring. There needs to be an application for the certification training by that person. There needs to be an application of the partner agency, and the trainer must work for that partner agency. And then once people have been accepted, you see a bunch of steps that are required to be met to really succeed and to become certified. And what's really critical for people to understand is that we've created this process to support quality and model fidelity. We want to make sure that the trainings that are going to be delivered are in similar quality to if you were getting it delivered by one of our staff or faculty. And I can answer more questions in detail about this, but I really wanted you to see this. And then at the end, the certification lasts for 2 years, and there's a recertification process that includes continuing education hours. And there's actually a tiny typo. It should say 27.5 continuing ed hours versus 27.7. We're particular, but we're not that particular in what we expect. And then a small recertification fee. And this is the process we expect people to go through so they can really come out and deliver high quality trainings for their agency or community partners. And so when we look at this process, these are the current licensing fees, and they've stayed stable over the last couple of years. That under contract we expect to get paid for training delivered. And so again, the initial training, and this, if you look at this, it really amounts to $37.50 a day, whether it's the overview day, which is 1 day, or the core, which is 4 days. And this really allows us to sustain this certification effort and gives you the ability to sort of determine your budget. So for instance, we've had some agencies come to us, they get certified. We're working on a cohort in the United Kingdom right now, and they planned, and they budgeted for 4 core trainings in the next 12 months. The maximum number of people you can put in the core training is 40 because it's experiential by design. And so they budgeted out for 160 people times $150 US would be how they could budget and plan for what it would cost them to deliver those trainings under the certification program in the next 12-month period. So again, to give you a feel, now if they were an NGO or a nonprofit, they could say, we're going to charge double that or triple that out to our partner agencies, to our people in the community. We recoup the licensing fee back to Safe and Together. And then we use the rest of the money to support programming, to support the faculty that we use, the trainers, whatever you choose to do. So this is what it is. We work internationally. This gets translated into local currency. In those instances, we have clauses in our contracts to adapt them to the local environment if the exchange rate changes significantly. So these are the additional credentials coming up that we started rolling out the supervisor training in Australia already, and that we know that we're going to be adding an intersections credential. So this means that agencies can really plan for that over the course of number of years, we can be not just training frontline staff in the core training and reaching out to our larger community with our overview day or a larger agency with overview day, but we can target our supervisors. We can target this intersection of domestic violence and substance use and mental health, and build that capacity to do that. We're going to be expecting to add a partnering training, which focuses on how systems can better partner with survivors. And then working with men as parents is another curriculum we expect to add a credential in at some point. And this is just the beginning of seeing where this is going. And so a couple of things to think about, and this is the last slide I'm going to show you at this point before I stop and take questions, is based on our experiences, I came up with sort of some frequently asked questions or some things to think about. Who are the best candidates? We know that some agencies often look to put their formal training staff into these positions. We find that that's often less effective than a practitioner trainer model or a coach trainer model, using people who are coaches within your system. But if you do that, the one strong caveat, which we strongly support the practitioner trainer model, because they come with credibility, they come with experience, and if they've got some skills in training, we can support them in getting better at that. But they come with the direct practice experience that really helps the students, the participants, the trainees in the classes really get the most out of it. But the important thing is some of these other things need to be thought about, which is, are you ready to support a trainer's time needed to deliver? And what that means is we've seen some of these efforts fail because they haven't made plans to release that practitioner training from their workload at the right level so they can go and deliver 4 of these trainings a year. And that needs support from leadership, from their direct supervisors. Adjustments of workloads often are needed. And so really think hard, are we ready to support the person or the people who are going to do training? Is there going to be good communication between the agency leadership and the trainers? We often see that that there's not a really great connection, and it's often around implementation planning. And so you want to be thinking about really, why do we want to do this? What are we hoping to accomplish? What other elements do we need to put in place? Who are our target agencies for these trainings? Our target audiences for the trainings? How is this part of our larger vision to become domestic violence informed? Who are our partners? If you plan to go outside your agency, what's your marketing plan for that? How are you going to do outreach? And we can help you with that. And then do we have the budgeting for licensing fees over multiple years? And that's something really to think about if you're going to keep doing this over multiple years. So we had one agency we work with that they just came back with a 5-year plan where they budget into their budget 5 years worth of licensing fees. We've had people really do implementation plans where they're focusing initially on new workers. Sometimes people focus on seasoned workers. We have one jurisdiction, and sometimes it's about also combining this with e-learning, that they're targeting different parts of the organization, some with the live training and some with the e-learning. And so these are just some things that are really useful to think about as you're kind of moving forward on this or considering it. So I'm going to stop the sharing for a second. I may come back to this. And so I'm going to start with the questions that might have been in the chat box, and then kind of move our way through what other questions people may have. Okay. You will have access to the PowerPoint and to the recording of this afterwards. That's not a problem. Yeah, Heidi spoke to that. We will be able to get you the links for the future access to this recording. The recertification happens every 2 years, Danielle, and it requires ongoing learning. We are in the process of building up our library of learning opportunities. And so what's going to happen is that you'll be able to get a significant amount of that opportunities through us, which is the goal. And again, that's at no additional cost. We know that people need to learn and need to grow. And so we're really trying to do that. We also understand people need to have other experiences beyond Safe It Together to really grow as a trainer. And so we have that continuing education experience split between us and other people. And I think Heidi, I don't know if you remember the answer to this, but the mentoring will be counting to some degree in the first year, right? So that.
Yes, a mentor call equals an hour of ongoing continuing learning.
Okay, that counts towards the to that recertification. So you basically get a jump start with that. From the is there an educational background? Shelley, do you want to answer that one? Because you've been very involved with kind of crafting and recrafting that for the U.S. and international environment.
Yes, and what we've looked at typically is a bachelor's degree or higher, although there have been times where we have looked at the individual experience and have accepted trainers if they do not have a bachelor's.
And what part of what drives this is that coming out of, we straddle a number of different disciplines: the domestic violence sector, advocacy, women's work. We straddle battery intervention and men's behavior change, child protection, courts. And we know there are a lot of people working who are doing really amazing work who are only coming into this process with only a bachelor's degree or the similar level. And I've seen tremendous practitioners who don't have any more advanced education. And we don't want to leave them out of this opportunity. And people can come with diverse backgrounds, but most of them are coming out with some sort of human services experience, some social work experience, but not limited to that. Shelley, is there anybody else, kind of any other backgrounds that kind of you're seeing in the application process?
No, those are primarily human services, social work. That's pretty much it. Some education, perhaps.
Yeah, okay. So I've answered all the questions in the chat box. We've got about 25 people on the call, so we may have to do a little bit of traffic policing around questions, but I'm going to open up the floor for the next 20 plus minutes to take questions verbally.
Okay, David, there is a question in the chat box of how often do you plan on offering the certification training and where?
We are committed to offering a certification cycle, which is a core training like we're doing in Denver in April, and a certification, a foundational certification training once a year in North America, in the United Kingdom, and Australia right now. And that allows you to plan, so if for turnover or expansion, so you can backfill easily. That's part of the reason we like that lower entry-level certification fee, because you can backfill, or if you feel like you need greater need to fill and need more trainers, then you can add more in easily. So you can plan. So we have a schedule, a calendar that really kind of goes around the 12 months where we're going to be in one place at one time. And I don't know, Heidi or Shelley, if you can kind of say when we're going to be doing our certificate. I lost track when we were doing our certification trainings in the United Kingdom and Australia in the next 12 months. Shelley, do you have that memorized?
Not memorized, no, but we will be in Australia in November, I believe. And
Right.
our certification in the UK is in January?
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
And there's no, Heidi, do you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say the North American cycle happens in the spring. The Australian cycle, the core, I believe, is in August this year. The train the trainer certification training is in November. And the United Kingdom is, I think, July and December.
Okay.
It could be a little off on that, but anyway, it runs sort of seasonally. So
Right.
for all of you in North America, at this point, core and certification will happen each spring.
Right. And there's nothing saying you can't travel from the U.S. to Australia to go to the training, or the U.S. to the United Kingdom, or vice versa. There's nothing like that. Andrea, you asked a question. It's a great question. How many trainings are required to be provided? I believe, Shelley, in the contract to stay certified, it's at least one core training a year. Do you remember what the language is in there? It's in the contract.
I believe it was 2. But
Yeah. So we'll check on that, Andrea, and just get back to you, because that's a detail that really hasn't come up. And maybe Shelley can look while we're on the call. And yes, all the trainings can be internal. People are doing very different things with the certification. Some people, like Child Safety in Queensland, they're primarily exclusively focusing on training their internal staff. Michigan, which has certified trainers, they're training all their Department of Health and Human Services staff. Well, they're doing it into the counties. Ohio's doing it into the counties from a centralized state location. We've got a group we're partnered with in Australia and Western Australia called Stopping Family Violence. They're training in their sector. They're the peak domestic violence education and training organization in Western Australia. So their job is to train into the wider community. So they're training other agencies. So you could absolutely focus on, if you can meet those continuing certification requirements, which Shelley's checking on, how many you need to do in a year to continue with your certification. You could absolutely do it only to your new hires in your agency if you have enough. And there's no minimum number. If you're training your own staff, we're often telling people, if we're coming to do training, it's the most cost effective for you to fill it up at 40. If you're delivering it internally, and you're paying per person to us in licensing fees, you could do a training for 10 people or 15 or 20. So again, it gives you a lot more ability to control delivery in that way. Okay, so that's...
Okay, David, the answer to that question is the delivery of 2 core trainings or an equivalent number of one-day overview.
In the 2 years.
In the 2 years.
Yeah, so it's 1 a year, basically, on average. Thank you, Shelley, for checking that. Cindy, you said you attended the core last year in San Antonio. You should have. We changed systems. So if you don't have the score yourself, you should check with Amy Cook, or you can just check through Shelley and she'll get you to Amy. We have that data somewhere. We just need to access it for you. Danielle, your question, what's involved with becoming a partner agency? I would answer this in two ways. To become a partner agency, you really need to think through some of these questions that we've talked about, what your goals are, who your target audience is, what you want to achieve. Can you handle the budgeting? Will you be able to support your trainers? That's the real important thing just to think about. And we're happy to talk. If somebody reaches out to us afterwards and wants to do a separate offline conversation about, is this right for me? You know, for my agency, we're happy to do that, because we'd rather do that now versus you getting into the process and really not being a good fit for you. That said, the formal process for applying is actually fairly straightforward. We ask you, we have an application process. You know, it's meant to weed out inappropriate agencies, like they're the Department of Transportation for their state. You know, we're not who we're looking to partner with. But it's really the sense of, have you thought this through? Do you understand the expectations? And so I don't want to say that the application process for the partner agency is a formality, but there's no, we're not looking to rule people out. We're just looking to make sure people are prepared. Shelley, is there anything else you would add to that kind of, that sort of question about what's involved with becoming a partner agency?
No, the only other question that I can think of off the top of my head that's in the application is an understanding of the support needed for the certified trainer.
Right, and those are some of the questions we want you to think about, because we've seen that's one of the ways people really have not thought it through, and it's ended up being a stumbling point for the agency, for the trainer. Trainers get invested very heavily in this, feel very passionate about it oftentimes, and then feel like they can't really deliver on what they've been certified to do. Samantha, there are 4 of us under Samantha. If all of you are on the call, yes, it's an honor system, Samantha. We're not going to say you didn't meet the mandatory. You know, this is really part of this is our attempt for the first time to say, hey, we want to really let you know what you're getting into. You know, attend this mandatory information center session, and if you click off, if you've been part of this, you click off on the box, it'll be fine. So that's okay. Thank you for checking. Other questions? We've got, we can end early, but we've got 15 minutes kind of budgeted out for this. Any questions that are kind of percolating up for people about the certification program, the certification process, becoming a partner agency, the deliverables around the core? Samantha's showing us her power and control wheel on her wall. Anything like that, any questions? While we're waiting, Heidi, is there anything you want to add around the certification training or the mentors that you want to add in the mentoring process?
Sure. So to be clear, the attending core training, which is mandatory before you can even apply to be a certified trainer, is important on a couple of levels. In this instance, one is that it's important that you're absolutely clear about the core training. Ideally, you've also had some experience using the Safe and Together model in your work. That's not mandatory, but it certainly supports your opportunities in training to share your experiences, share examples, things like that. It's also an opportunity for you to see the core training modeled. So the certification training is to deliver the core training itself. So it gives you an opportunity to see it in action, to see someone, one of our staff or faculty training it. So it's a great opportunity to observe it, knowing that that's what you would like to be doing in the future. And finally, the certification training itself, we call it the train the trainer kind of training, is really about the how. So if you've been through core and and received that sort of knowledge and learning and practice, and ideally used it a little in your work, that coming together for 5 days is really about how to train the material. So it's trainer tips, but it's also the kind of things like how can you handle hard questions? How can you deal with potential victim blaming in the room? So it can be very practical, but it can also be a place to sort of apply, share stories and examples. But really, it's the how to do the training. So it's a great opportunity, and it really deepens the learning. There's chances in the training to do a little practice with one of the modules. So it's a very supportive setting to really consider what it's like to train it and to have some practice doing it. In Colorado. David, do you want to answer that one? I mean, I know the answer, but it's
No, I'll go. Did you want to say anything about the mentoring briefly, Heidi, before?
I do. Yes, thank you. So one of this whole process is meant to be very supportive for those entering into this area. So after the train the trainer happens, then there is a mentor assigned. Everyone has a mentor, and the groups are usually 5 or 6 in a group attached to a mentor. If there's multiple people from an agency, we keep those certified to be certified trainers together with a mentor, and that is a 12-month support. And a really important part of the process. So once a month, there's a Zoom call similar to the one you're having right now, where there is sort of material, so there's content discussed, but it's also a huge support around training. So there's a chance to really sort of process as a group the hard questions that you may have had in training, or questions about applying material, questions about, I had a question from a sector that I'm not as familiar with, and so I'd like to understand that more. So strategies, and that is a mandatory commitment to attend all 12 mentor calls, and it's across a year, so it's once a month. They are recorded as well, so the expectation is that that everyone would get all the content. There's some video in each of those calls and some practice as well. So that's meant really to support the trainers in their first year of training. And it's a wonderful experience, and has really, again, the feedback that we get is that it really deepens the learning, and it's a level of support that is critical while people are really engaged in their early trainings.
And kind of add and finish up what Heidi's saying with the mentors. The mentors are the ones who review the videotapes that are submitted that's required. The first training that every training has to be pre-registered with us, and there's a whole process that kind of gets set in motion. That's kind of a nuts and bolts thing that I'm not going to go into the call, but the training gets pre-registered. Every training gets pre-registered. The first one that gets pre-registered has to include them videotaping themselves. And again, as part of our commitment to quality and ease and assessment and support, we actually give you a credit back to help you pay for professional videotaping of that trainer, because we want to make sure that it's easy, that tech doesn't get in the way, that we get a high quality video back. We've had people trying to videotape themselves on iPhones, and that's been a whole other adventure by itself. But those trainings, the mentors are the ones who review it, so they really get to know the training style of that person via the videos that they watch. So just to go back to the questions, which are really good questions, we have other trainers that are interested in attending yet could not attend today. Shelley, we didn't say, did we focus on who needed, this was mandatory for? Was it the partner agency?
Yes, it's mandatory for a representative of the partner agency, and it's optional but highly recommended for the potential trainers.
For the trainers. So again, you're not required to make all your trainers watch it, the ones that are interested, but we encourage it. Andrea, you're asking, you say, I work in child welfare. We do new hire training every other month. Training is agency funded. If you were to become certified to train and you were doing one training per new hire class, you would be paying per person in the new hire class, not per class held. So it did, you know, we really are pretty, we really require, and it's in the contracts that hopefully you had a chance to look at, because those contracts are a really good guide for understanding what's expected. But the class size for the core training is held at 40. Again, this is about model fidelity and about quality. When you start going above that, you really make it difficult for learners to really participate and trainers to do a good job with them. So when we're talking about, you could do a class of up to 40, you would pay that fee, and that cost, you see, if it's the core, Andrea, it's that $150 US per person per core training. And so that's would be, but if you had a class of new hires that was only 10 people, you wouldn't be paying us a full per class fee. You'd be paying for those 10 people. And that's what it was. So it would vary based on what you paid per class, would vary by how many people were in it. And so if you were doing a class of 10 people, for the core, if it was 10 people doing 4 days of training, it'd be $1,500 back to us. So that's what it would be, but that would vary based on, it would be, if it was 20 people, it would be 3,000. That would change per number of people in the class. Going to Kaylee's question, is there a list of ready developed partner agencies? No, because this is the first time we're doing this process in North America. So those of you who decide to sign on at this point would be part of the very first cohort of partner agencies with associated certified trainers in the United States and Canada. And so that just, we started in Australia. Our second year of rolling this out was in the UK. And now we're adding North America in year 3. That cost applies to government agencies as well. That is the model by which we can pay for the evaluation, the training, the certification, the updates to the curriculum, the mentoring, the continuing ed resources. That's the model, the financial model that's for everybody, governmental and non-governmental. It's the same one for everybody. It's the same one in UK and Australia. It's just, we just translated there to local currency. We've tried to create a level playing field for licensing fees. And so that's NGOs, nonprofits, and government. Who are the mentors? Heidi, do you want to speak to who are the mentors?
Sure. The mentors are our staff and or our faculty. So they are trainers with years of experience doing core training, and they all work in the field as well. So, so they have live experience working at the intersection of domestic violence and child maltreatment, and they are part of our cohort of faculty and staff.
Great, that's great, Heidi. You know, some of these folks have been working with us going back as far as I'm trying to think. Some have been as almost as long as 15 years.
That's right.
So they're senior folks who really are very experienced and are training with us all over the world. So have experience in different jurisdictions. We've just got a couple minutes left, and this doesn't mean that you can't email us with questions. I would encourage you to direct your questions to Shelley, and that she can parcel them out if she can't answer them directly. We will be sending out a link in a few days once the video is ready that will tell you where the video is. We will be keeping people updated on reminders about the certification process. I do want to encourage people, if they're considering getting certified, and they haven't been part of the core, that one of the most important things is to get registered for the core that's happening in April in Denver. We have 13 spots left, so about 2/3 of the spots are gone. So we expect them to keep filling up over the next 10 days or so. So I would encourage people, if this is on your agenda for this year, to look into that if you don't have the core training, and know that we'll be back again doing it again, in North America in the next 12 months as well. The certification is 20 people max. So certification cohort, again, with our commitment to model fidelity, Heidi's been our certification trainer extraordinaire, and she's traveled all over the world doing that training. And 20 lets her have an intimate experience with people, to get to know them, to give them on-the-spot coaching, for them to have an intimate experience with their peers. There's a lot of small group work in that certification training, and so it's a fabulous experience. So we really keep that number down, and so really there's a limited capacity in terms of that process. Yeah, Heidi.
Just wondering, Shelley, if you know how many spots are left in. Are there any? Do you have any numbers? I know that the process hasn't really even begun yet, but do you have a sense of the interest?
Yes, the notice of the applications was just released, and right now we have 14 spots left.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So any last questions? Anything else people really feel like they want answered right now? Okay. And I'm just going to throw up here, our contact information. Obviously, I assume everybody has it, but just so our communications people basically tell us we can't do this too much. So again, if there are people who are not familiar with the model, go to our YouTube channel. There's lots of clips there. Go to the website. Really, we want you to be familiar with who we are, what we do, what this model is, in order to kind of check it out. We will, Shelley, let's add to follow-up email about one of the infographics we'll send to them so they can see some of the data on the model. I didn't present on the data on the core and the other trainings. And if people have, there was an earlier question about I think that we may have missed actually about it being evidence-based. And the answer to that is there haven't been any, sort of the standard for evidence-based, depending on who you talk to, is sort of double-blind or, at the extreme level, or it's experimental. And I'll be flat out and say, no, we don't have any evidence at that level. We have significant building evidence about its impact, including data out of Florida that showed it correlated with reduction of out-of-home placement. We have pilot study we did in Iowa, which surely showed survivors really responded very well to the material. We've got the ongoing gathering of data on level 1, level 2, and level 3 on the trainings, which is really very positive, where people are learning a lot. So I think we've gone a lot further in developing evidence base than a lot of other systems programs, to be honest. But again, if you've got more specific questions about evidence-based, by the way, we're partnered with Michigan State Universities. I mean, there's so much that I can share, but we're partnered with Michigan State University's Research Consortium Gender-Based Violence, and they do our evaluation work. So the evaluation work is university-based. So it's not just us by ourselves doing the evaluation. We invest in that relationship so that when you get our infographics, they're co-branded, both with Safe and Together and with Michigan State University on it as well. So when you're talking to people about the evidence about the model, we've got a collaboration with them. And then the last thing I'll say is, just for making sense of it, is people will often ask us, how does this connect up with other child welfare practice models? And we connect well with signs of safety. We connect well with structured decision-making and safety organized practice. We've got extensive experience working with all the major practice models, Action for Children, the 6 domains. So for those organizations that are worried about model fatigue or how this connects up, we work very closely to bridge those different models, and there's tremendous alignment between Safe and Together and its behavioral focus and those other approaches as well. So again, if you've got more specific questions, please follow up with us with direct questions.
Yeah, sorry. And to respond, Jennifer, to your last question, to say that yes, if anyone attended the San Antonio core training, that is absolutely reason enough to count. That is the curriculum used in San Antonio is the most recent iteration of the core curriculum. So that absolutely counts.
Great. All right. Thank you all for taking the time to listen and hear about this. And we hope to hear from folks soon, and to either answer questions, to see your registration, or just to discuss what else you might need to know to make a decision about what's right for your organization. So Heidi and Shelley, thanks for being on the call. Shelley, thanks for organizing it. And thank you all for taking the time.